Hello and welcome to this Need to Know special. It's the most fundamental review of primary education for at least a decade. From the outset it was a tall order. Sir Jim Rose's review, in the government's words, had to establish the essential knowledge, skills and understanding our schools will teach all our primary age pupils for years to come. On the face of it, it's a defining moment. The entire primary curriculum up for grabs.
Well, the thing is that this is the first time we've looked at the primary curriculum for over 10 years. And I think, there's no desire amongst anybody to go back to the old days before the national curriculum, the kind of topic-based learning, which, to be honest, didn't really drive a proper understanding and knowledge of the basic subjects. Nobody wants to go back to those days. Now, if I said to you that according to the national curriculum, you aren't supposed to learn about PowerPoint and voice recordings and all those computer skills until you went to secondary school, to big school, what would you say? That's not right. What would you say? But I think Jim's saying that the curriculum in the last 10 years has become too rigid. We need to have more flexibility, more space within the curriculum for learning to be engaging and exciting, but also to create the space for those maths, those literacy and those ICT skills.
In a moment we'll hear from Sir Jim and unravel the details of his interim recommendations to ministers. But first, what does youth and experience think should be done to improve the primary curriculum?
It would be, let's have every child going to school in the morning knowing that at least a good part of the day was going to be fun, that they were going to learn 10 new things which they would be delighted to go home and share with their parents or carers, and that teachers would have exactly the same sense when they got to school.
I think that all schools should have great teachers that will understand you and recognise your problems and abilities.
We need to look again at what we actually want from education in this country. Do we want specific subjects? Do we want children to be thinking about the knowledge they're learning or the skills? What is it that makes an educated individual?
We think together, and together we create an even bigger curriculum for all of us to do. Because as we're working together, we learn more about each other and get to know each other as well as we could.
So the interim report into the primary curriculum is now out, to, it has to be said, a fairly hostile reception from parts of the press, but to a broad welcome from the teacher associations.
We broadly welcome the work that Jim Rose has done, and we're pleased that the NHT was able to input that work. I've seen an awful lot of, well, the professional word is tosh, in the press this week about it, and quite clearly the recommendations are for subject definition to stay, but actually be in a cross-curricular way.
I'm joined now at the Department for Children, Schools and Families' own television studio by the report's author, Sir Jim Rose. Welcome, Sir Jim.
Thank you.
First of all, before we get into some of the detail, why was this review needed?
Well, I think it's important to understand that it's rooted in the Children's Plan. And we'd already, of course, reviewed the early years foundation stage, which came into force September this year. Equally, we'd reviewed the secondary curriculum, which also came into force September this year. So if you like, as usual, the piggy in the middle in the way in which we do things is primary education. And certainly there's a need to look at the primary curriculum, and that's how the remit was built up.
Let's look now at some of the detail of your report. You're talking about 6 areas of learning. Can you just tell us what they are and why you've gone for that approach?
Yeah, well, let's just discuss why we've gone for that approach. The report most certainly is not saying let's get rid of subjects. Quite the opposite. It's saying let's bring together the best of subject teaching and what we're calling cross-curricular studies. So we shall still be recommending very, very strongly that children are taught, let's say, English, maths, ICT and other aspects of the curriculum. What we're trying to do, however, is give much more opportunity for use and application of that knowledge and those skills, so that we develop better understanding. So it's knowledge and skills into understanding. Where subjects almost naturally come together, like history and geography, then we would like to see that relatedness in place.
The Rose Review covers curriculum, design and content. That's reading, writing, numeracy, ICT, modern foreign languages and personal development.
The fact of the matter is that he's decided that actually literacy and numeracy and personal and social education and ICT are skills and essential basic skills. And then he said there are the range of subjects, and then there are a set of permissions about how you teach across those subjects. As an intellectual construct, that's not a bad approach to things, although I have to say elevating ICT as a skill similar to literacy and numeracy, I have some real reservations about.
Now, clearly a lot of this is to try and build on the early years foundation stage.
Absolutely.
But does that work all the way through? When you're getting towards the top end of primary school, is that still appropriate?
No, and of course you've put your finger on the key point. We've got 6 areas of learning in the early years. We've got 13 subjects plus religious education starting at age 12, year 7. The dilemma for us, and always has been, this is certainly no new problem, how do we actually bridge that gap? I mean, are we seriously expecting to teach 13 subjects and RE in the hands of one class teacher, almost in any year group in primary, and certainly at the top end? If we overload the curriculum to an extent which makes it well nigh unmanageable, we will weaken the effect of even the best teachers.
Now, let's look at some of the other specific recommendations. Foreign languages.
The first thing to say to primary schools in all of this is well done. I mean, they don't have to start modern languages until 2010. The vast majority of them that we've seen so far, and certainly recorded in Ron Deering's review, for example, shows that they're already doing it all at this point.
Okay. Par exemple, elle adore la danse. Or, il aime le foot. D'accord?
Clearly, the issue again is going to be teacher expertise, and a lot of work, and I have to say considerable investment, is going into improving that. One other thing I would say, we've put it with English and communication because, of course, we want to give due attention to speaking and listening, reading and writing, understanding that reading and writing feed off speaking and listening. We also want to get the read across, as it were, from English to French, let's say, if it's French that's being taught. And where, again, we've talked about this business of cross-curricular studies, if you're studying a language like French, or any language for that matter, surely you're going to be looking at French culture, you're going to make some attempt to say, well, where is France, what's the geography? I mean, it just seems to me to be so related that putting it there is really quite a productive way to go.
So what's the view of the NAHT's Mick Brooks?
We were just slightly concerned that a quarter of the recommendations were to do with teaching a separate language. And we thought that was a bit of an overemphasis, and it's certainly a worthy thing to do. But we're just a little bit anxious about that.
Just as Sir Jim visited many primary schools during the course of his review, we invited ourselves to 2 quite different schools. Sue Seifert is an award-winning head teacher of an inner-city school in North London, Montem Primary in Islington.
Welcome to Montem Primary School. Behind me is the old Victorian building where children started their lives many years ago, and where they should be seen and not heard, and where they lined in straight lines. If you follow me, you will see the change, the difference we have in the 21st century and what the school looks like now. Come on, let's see what's through this door here.
Are you all ready? You're all holding your knives?
Yeah.
Have a chop and see what happens with your knives.
Ah, here we have, in the nursery, children cutting up pineapples and tasting them.
What's it like, Bertha?
This is about learning through play, and play is one of the most important areas in the primary school life.
Does that go there?
Well done! And so this journey through the school is about how we learn through play. Come on, let's see what our children are up to now. And here we are in the hall, and the reception class are having a PE lesson. They're learning how to climb, jump, turn. They're learning teamwork, they're learning skills, and they're enjoying it, which is very important. Okay, let's see what's happening through this door. Music is really important in Montham School because not only is it for the now, but it's something they can take through and enjoy throughout their adult lives. If they understand that music is part of their learning, that learning again becomes something they love. And that's what we need to instill in our children, a love of learning. And I hope that when Jim Rose produces his latest document, that will reflect lots of the things that are happening in our school, and that people will listen, that testing and target setting might have a small place within the school, but it really has not the heart of learning and how children should be seeing education.
So we're hearing from head teachers like Sue Seifert there how important they think it is to develop that love of learning amongst children. How do you think your proposals will help in that?
I think several times in the report, if memory serves, I talk about the need to make sure that we instill a love of learning in children to the extent that they want to go on learning. Cross-curricularity will help with some of this because children's interests can be fired, and I think making that relatedness a reality will give us much of what's being asked for there. And children are interested. This is another interesting, I think, reflection on today's thinking about primary education. There are those who think we can just go down the skills track. I don't think we can. We've got to have some knowledge on which the skills are promoted. And frankly, children are interested in interesting facts. And we've got to make those areas interesting for children. Ample opportunities so to do.
One area where some obvious updating was needed to the national curriculum is in ICT, as Deputy Head Louise Ritchie reveals.
In my opinion, there's a real need for a curriculum overhaul. It's a long time since the national curriculum was developed, and in my opinion, it's outdated, outmoded. Some parts of it, such as the ICT aspects of the primary curriculum, are completely obsolete.
So, interesting views there, Jim, on the use of ICT. You've obviously made some big proposals there, and also effectively you seem to be saying bring forward what's done in Key Stage 3 into primary schools.
What seems to be the pattern is that we get a lot of engagement with ICT. We don't get much use of ICT for what you might call developing learning in primary. And to be frank, what we've seen has surprised me in terms of the cutting edge, how well primary children benefit from all of this when they get it right.
So today we've got a whole day of animation. All the hard work we've done designing, making, editing our monsters, we're now going to be filming them.
ICT has an enormous potential for enriching the basics, for actually helping children into the discourse of a subject, enlarging vocabulary and so forth.
We were moving monsters a little bit each time. We moved them 15 frames a second.
Excellent. So now how many do we need to finish off? 15. So there must be no movement now. Okay, so Jessica, stay very, very still. Is that exactly how you wanted it to move?
Yeah.
Yeah? Brilliant. You've done very, very well there. Well done. What sort of music?
This last term, looking at children who are working on some of these managed learning environments, the use to which they're putting ICT is really quite breathtaking. What we're looking at there, as they say, are digital natives. And my goodness, if I could do half the things that these children could do with ICT, I'd be much prouder of myself than I am, to tell you the truth.
Okay, let's give Jessica a nice round of applause. That was excellent. Well done.
The teaching unions were amongst those consulted for their views on the primary curriculum.
We made a detailed submission to Sir Jim Rose. A key issue for us was that the curriculum was too overcrowded, that it needed to be slimmed down. The teachers needed to be given more time to be able to use their professional expertise and judgment.
Well, of course, if we go back before the national curriculum, both in the primary phase and in the secondary phase, there was much more flexibility to work on topic-based, much more flexibility to work across subject areas. And it's been the dead hand of the national curriculum and the necessity of secondary schools to split children into different subject areas that has come back into the primary school and I think taken a lot of the creativity out of it. when we've done work with this on our primary members, they've said things like, let them be suns again, you know, shining suns. Let them really develop to their full potential. Let them develop a love of learning. Now, you do that best by, to some extent, being able to follow children's areas of interest.
I think he's taken notice of the submission from the point of view that he is trying to introduce more flexibility into the curriculum and more space. He's going for a thematic review with some clear subject specialisms within there. I don't think there's anything particularly new or revolutionary about that, but certainly I think it will be the start of an important debate.
We're not looking for it to being less rigorous, we're looking for it to be a curriculum that really does engage children at an early age, because actually if we can't engage children in the primary sector, my colleagues in the secondary sector stand no chance whatsoever.
Now, the other area which can seem a bit touchy-feely to people who still think education is all about the 3 R's is the importance of emotional well-being.
Emotional intelligence is not something that one should poo-poo. It has a real place in our school.
What's very clear, what we do know about the future, that of course so much of which is uncertain and unknown, is that the soft skills that traditionalists have always put at the secondary level of importance in education are going to be the hard currency of the 21st century.
If you were to think about the conditions under which you as an adult learn best, it's very rare that you'd learn in a situation where you were unhappy, you didn't feel valued, your views were not considered, you were belittled.
Now, so Jim, emotional intelligence is actually not one of your 6 areas of learning, but you do talk a lot about personal development. Are they the same things, emotional intelligence and personal development?
That certainly one is a subset of the other. We often forget there's a uniqueness about primary education when we come to talk about this area of personal development. Primary schools are smaller communities of learning than secondary schools, obviously, and the class teacher system makes for deeper relationships between, I think, child and teacher, because they're obviously much more in touch, much more familiar. Taking advantage of that is hugely important, because it's almost like habituating the school ethos into the day-to-day relationships. And that for me is something which is very primary. Actions speak louder than words.
For our second visit to a primary school, we went to Lent Rise School.
I think really all we're going to try and share with you is our learning journey over the last 15 years. And the place it had to start was in building a culture and ethos where everyone sang from the same song sheet. That was critical. It was also about raising aspirations. I think the way we did that initially was by looking together at what we needed to achieve. We spent the first 2 years building those bonds, building a network, a collaborative that would really work for all of us.
As a governor, this school equips children to learn through engagement in learning at a very early age. And I've had the pleasure of walking around the school, looking in each classroom, and the level of engagement from the 4-year-old up is really quite remarkable.
What is it, Jessica?
Strawberry.
Oh, yummy! A strawberry, very healthy, Jessica.
The second stage of our particular learning journey was to look at the world of technology. What we've done here is to create in every classroom a technology toolkit. So that obviously has an interactive whiteboard, a computer that drives it, scanners, DVD players, microscope webcams and visualizers. So there's a package of technology in every class, which means that teachers and pupils can select the most appropriate technology to use within any particular lesson.
Fingers in the air, showing me which way to go for my cert because I'm getting in a muddle. Ready? Whee! Have I done it right?
Interactive whiteboards, well, I think my teachers think they've died if the projector bulb glows because they're used all the time. You will have seen interactive whiteboards used with a phonics session. You will have seen an interactive whiteboard used with a Quizdom set where the children are actually preparing their own quizzes, which will then be put online, and through the use of Quizdom they will be able to revise any particular subject that they have been studying.
Question has been asked, what is a concave mirror? James has answered correctly, it's a mirror that bends inwards.
So the next step of the journey then was to think, how would we use technology in perhaps an even more innovative way? E-twinning allows you to twin your school, your class with different European nations. You connect with another class in another school in another nation, and actually you work together. So what we did was we put a project together which pulled out various areas of the curriculum that we could timetable effectively and share projects so that we had real audiences and real learning happening across nations. And what we then did was to find 14 partner nations so that every class in this school is partnered with a different nation. The idea is that a 4-year-old here will journey, if you like, through sharing their work with other children, through finding out about another nation, the culture, the ethos of that particular nation. They will journey through 7 nations in their time in primary education.
Hello to Trottine in French for me all together.
Bonjour, Trottine.
Very recently, the eTwinning has been extended worldwide. So we now have twins with schools in Africa and India and China. And I think that's great because we're living in a global world.
Il ou elle déteste. Julien.
He or she hates.
Excellent. Et il ou elle adore.
Oui. He or she loves.
Excellent, très bien.
My daughter does Italian club here and loves it. Comes home, can count in her Italian and her numbers. I think it's just as well she can do it in English as well.
So you can decide, can't you? Harry's quite right, because you've got to look at your substance and decide if it's dissolved. If there's lots of residue still...
I think it's critical that we offer these children in the primary sector breadth and balance. And I know that Jim Rose is looking at the same principle, that we should actually explore children's creativity, give them lots of opportunities to follow paths of their own.
It's better to find things out ourselves instead of the teacher finding it out and we're not doing anything. It's just fun and you get to find out more information than the teacher tells you.
As we await the outcome of the primary review, I think that what it will do is to give us guidance but allow us to be innovative and to actually take things beyond the guidance.
So we see there how Brenda Bigland has really modernised the curriculum in her own school. And you talk a lot about play-based, child-based curriculum. Is that all about making it more interesting, more fun?
What I think is interesting is that sometimes we get into this awful tension of the difference between play-based, that's to say child-initiated learning, and adult-initiated learning, as if they were two polar opposites. My argument is that they're not. They should be complementary.
Now, inevitably, people have picked up the fact you talk about more flexibility, more play-based, child-based approaches. But at the same time, and I know it was outside your remit, we still have the national curriculum tests. Are the two compatible?
The issue, and I have to say, you're quite right, it's always raised whenever we go into schools, somewhere, somehow. It's about things like the way the tests are used. So, you know, in order to get children used to test conditions and so on and so forth, there seems to be, in some schools, overkill in terms of starting early on practicing test conditions, which clearly, I mean, is not going to help very much if we've already got a curriculum that's
But you can understand why schools do it when it's so important to them in terms of league table. Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
And is that something you will be able to address in the final report?
Not to the, I mean, certainly not in the remit, so I'm not, you know, obliged to address it. But I think the expert group that's been set up is a good move, and I'm sure that these issues are being taken on board to at least some extent.
Thank you, Sir Jim.
Pleasure.
So, do others think Sir Jim should have been allowed to look at testing?
I'm pleased the expert group has been set up with Sir Jim Rose in it. And we look to making sure that we have 21st century assessment systems, which is going to assist a 21st century curriculum.
It was absolutely right to divorce testing from the curriculum. I think Jim Rose's review would have been skewed into a debate about whether the tests were effective, whether teacher assessment was better, and that was not the purpose of the review. The purpose of the review was to look at the content of the curriculum and how it was structured.
We have said to Jim Rose that unless you change the arrangements for assessment at primary, you can put whatever curriculum you like in there. We will still have learning for assessment rather than assessment for learning.
Well, I think it's half a cup full, but poor Jim Rose could have gone much further if he hadn't been constrained by a whole set of things that the government told him not to do. The most obvious one is not to evaluate assessment and to come up with recommendations on assessment, as well as coming up with recommendations on the curriculum. And had he been able to do that, I think he would have come up with something more radical.
So what is the response to Sir Jim's interim report?
We want to ensure that ignorance is defeated. And one of my worries is that this report does not put sufficient emphasis on ensuring that children know more about the world around them and know more through traditional subjects, which are always, have always, will remain always the best route to understanding.
Anyone can group a whole load of subjects and sort of slot 2 or 3 subjects in under one headline. It doesn't necessarily mean that in terms of what schools are going to be asked to do, that things will be slimmed down. And all I note is that every time the government has an opportunity, it piles on new obligations onto the school curriculum, just as it's talking about simplifying it.
What we would like to see, and Jim Rose's review has started that dialogue, is isn't it about time that we moved from sector reviews of the curriculum and actually looked at a holistic review of the curriculum?
The reality is that those 6 areas of learning, which I support, are about permissions to teach across the curriculum. He hasn't got rid of the subjects. Basically those subjects are in the background, and neither, incidentally, has he yet tackled the curriculum content in each of the subjects either. He says he's going to keep that for the final report.
I'm really concerned that these areas of understanding, rather than being proper disciplines, proper aids to learning, will just be an opportunity for a return to the sorts of topic and theme-based learning that we know didn't work in the past.
Many schools will feel that when they listen to some of the headlines that are coming out of the Rose Review, they're already doing quite a few of these things that are being talked about. They're already developing modern languages and IT in primary schools. And I fear that really this is not adding a lot to the debate.
This is an interim report. There's going to be a further round of discussion and consultation. Other ideas will come in from experts, from parents, from teachers around the country. This is not yet at the stage of clear decisions, but it's obvious the direction which we want to go in, which is to make sure the curriculum is exciting for teachers to teach and means that pupils really learn and are motivated to learn the core issues, but in a modern and exciting way.
So there we have it. Jim Rose's final report is due in the spring of 2009, when we might learn more about the direction the government plans to take. But what we do already know is that he's recommending a more creative, fluid approach to primary education. Has Jim fixed it? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. Goodbye.